So, hello guys. Our chosen country is Denmark, and today we will discuss about legal and ethical policies which has an impact on their environment and our own comments or reactions about the implementation of ethical and legal policies concerning the protection of the environment. Thea and I will discuss about legal policies, and Roy and Nancy will discuss about ethical policies.
So, for the legal policy, Denmark's main authority in implementing environmental policies is the Ministry of Environment, and there are three agencies under it, which are the Environmental Protection Agency, the Danish Geodata Agency, and the Danish Nature Agency. Their main environmental law is the Environmental Protection Act, or the Consolidated Act number 879, which states their objectives and as well as the means to achieve them, or the framework and guidelines, as well as statutory orders. So these agencies also administer other laws such as Chemical Substances and Products Act, Soil Contamination Act, and the Environmental Liability Act, which will be tackled later on. So, Frank will continue.
The Danish the Danish Geodata Agency gathers geographical information about the land and sea in which they make it accessible on the internet. Collected information include the location of houses, roads, rivers, and lakes, what the landscapes look like, and where the boundaries are. These data are then used by public authorities in connection with environment and climate protection, mobile access to data, and information services, and by the police and emergency services in carrying out their task. The Nature Agency is responsible for the overall protection of nature, including the Planning Act, the Act on Environmental Objectives, and several others regarding nature-related issues. Denmark has implemented the Industrial Emissions Directive, which called IED, wherein operations such as industrial and agricultural production processes and waste treatment activities are subject to a permit from the Danish authority.
So for the legal policies, as mentioned, they have their Environmental Protection Act, which has supplementary numbers of acts and guidelines. The first one is the first one concerns water pollution, which has statutory orders on waste incineration plants and wastewater emissions. So these are about chemical disposal and bodies of water and how to preserve their ocean, lakes, rivers, and also to preserve wildlife and maintain animal and plant diversity. The second one is about air pollution. It is about gas emissions from factories and trucks. So they are planning to implement carbon pricing where they need to pay the cost of the greenhouse gas they emit. So this is to minimize such emissions for them to adapt a safer operating processes to avoid paying. The third one is waste management. They have directive orders for electronic equipment waste, end of life vehicle waste, and waste batteries. The fourth one is about land contamination. So they established a soil management system where they map contaminated areas and try to rehab it to avoid its health and safety risks, as well as preventing further contamination. The fifth one is renewable energy and energy efficiency. Denmark aims to be independent from fossil fuel by 2050, and parliamentary parties have already agreed to use renewable energy for their energy consumption, phasing out petrol and diesel cars and other public transportation vehicles. They also plan to establish offshore wind farms and reduce taxes on electricity as well as budget their funds to promote eco-friendly transport and programs.
Sixth, the Act of Physical Planning. According to this act, regional authorities must decide how areas of land may be used. On the regional level, there are three different types: city areas, countryside areas, and summer house areas. The local authorities must respect these gradings and plans when deciding what to use a specific area for. Seventh, act on soil protection. The scope of the act covers soil which due to human interaction may have a harmful impact on water, human health, and the environment is general. Eighth, the act on compensation for environmental damages. The act regulates compensation for damages done against the environment, primarily in relation to air, water, soil, and the underground. Generally, no compensation may be granted for a non-economical loss unless special authorization is provided by an act. Section 2, number 1 of the Act, compensation must be given for personal damages, including physical damages and loss of a provider. Section 2, number 2 of the Act, compensation must be given for damage on property caused by pollution of the environment. Section 2, number 3 of the Act prescribes that compensation must be given for economic losses which exceed the character of what is expected on the certain area. Lastly, environmental tax. Under environmental tax, there are three divisions. Taxes on environmentally harmful products involved in consumption or manufacturing. Taxes are imposed on the use of harmful products. Examples of environmentally harmful products include pesticides and insecticides, CFC gases, which deplete the ozone layer, and HFC gases, which increase the greenhouse effect. Taxes on the discharge of pollutants. Discharge of pollutants is taxed. Examples of taxes on the discharge of pollutants are wastewater tax and nitrogen oxide tax. Taxes on scarce resources. The use of scarce resources is taxed. This includes taxes on water use and raw materials. Now the Thea will discuss of general penalties of environmental law in Denmark.
Yes, so since they are legal policies, they also have corresponding general penalties. So non-compliance with environmental law may result to criminal and civil liability to be prosecuted by their public authority. They may also have to pay a fine, which depends on the severity of the violation, and they can also be ordered to join cleanup operations and pay the expenses on those operations. So Roy will now discuss the ethical policies of Denmark.
Thank you, Dia. Yeah, well, I will start stating that the Ministry of Environment and Food of Denmark is responsible for administrative and research tasks in the areas of environmental protection, farming, and food production regarding the ethics around them. Well, the first one is Denmark without waste. Denmark is well aware of waste as a consequence of economic activity in society. The most vigorous the economy, the more waste they produce. However, waste can contain materials and resources which it can make sense to recycle. Denmark has come a long way in environmentally responsible waste management and in waste incineration. Denmark without waste is a Denmark in which, in the long term, they will recycle much more and incinerate much less. The same applies for landfilling, which in the long term they will only use for materials which are uneconomical to recycle or to incinerate. The second one is noise regulating policies. The Danish Environmental Protection Agency has published recommended noise limits for most types of environmental noise. As a general rule, the recommended noise limits are based on the perception of noise found by research where a large group of people were interviewed. The recommended noise limits express an acceptable noise impact both environmentally and health-wise. The limits are subject to a trade-off between the effects of noise on people and economic political considerations. A typical range from 10% to 15% of the population is highly annoyed when noise is as high as the recommended limit. When the noise is below the recommended limit, less people are annoyed. and no health effects are to be expected. When people complain about annoying noise from a plant, an industry, or an installation not having an environmental permit, the authorities use the recommended noise limits as the basis for evaluation of the actual noise impact. The authorities can raise a ban about noise reduction, which may include specific noise limits. When deciding which limits to set in actual cases, the authorities consider both the recommended noise limits and the practical and economical possibilities to reduce the noise. This type of regulations applies to workshops, shops, construction activities, restaurants, sports centers, recreation centers, etc., but cannot be used in regards to noise produced by private individuals or from road or rail traffic. Finally, the recommended noise limits are used in strategic planning when the number of noise impacted people due to a new project or plan in research or in connection with municipal noise action plans. In third place is the public procurement of sustainable timber. In 2013, the Danish government launched a new joint strategy for smart public procurement. An important element of this strategy is the decision that central government purchase sustainable timber. It reads, the government will ensure that government institutions only purchase verifiable sustainable timber and timber products, also in connection with use of timber in state construction projects. To achieve this goal, in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Environment has issued a circular that stipulates the conditions for ensuring sustainable timber in public works contracts, public supply contracts, and public service contracts for the state. Alongside with the circular, new and revised guidelines on public procurement of timber have also been developed. The guidelines serve as a practical tool for implementation of the commitments in the circular. Government-owned companies, municipalities, and regions are not obliged to comply with the regulations in the circular. However, they are encouraged to follow them or similar procurement policies based on the ethics of these guidelines. Now,
Well,
Nancy can proceed.
well, also I talk about ethics related policies in general. The Danish Ethics Council proposed to create a tax to discourage foods that harm the environment because one of the habits that has the most effect on global warming is the consumption of red meat due to greenhouse gas emissions associated with the breeding of those animals, and 10% of the food sold in Danish markets is for organic farming and it has complaints provided pesticides. The Danes have some of the most expensive transport in Denmark. In Denmark, taxes are paid on water for bathing. For every cubic meter of water, you pay 6.5 Danish crowns. It is paid at 10 hundred of what the water treatments cost, and the process of their taxes are used for improvement, research, and efficiency projects. Also, power generation companies must pay a pollution tax. The Danes have some of the most expensive transport taxes in the Europe Union, the percentage of the 39.5% of environment taxes renew. For example, the fuel tax for its part in 19 euros per gigajoule in the case of gasoline and 12 euros per gigalow in the case of diesel, and something to registration tax required to purchase the bicycle is of the 180% of the value of the car. Those are the reasons why in Denmark people prefer to ride a bike or using public transport that not buy a car. Denmark is the state in the European Union that charges the most green taxes. Okay, about the implementation and comments, what do you think, Kim?
Yeah, okay. Yes, now I will discuss of implementation of legal policies concerning the protection of the environment. So Denmark has implemented the Industrial Emissions Directive, which called IED. The IED succeeds the Integrated Pollution Prevention and Control Directive, IPPC, which called IPPC. So under the IED, all industrial production processes, agricultural production, and waste treatment activities covered by Annex 1 of the directive are subject to a permit from the relevant Danish authority. The main purpose of the IED is to limit and reduce air pollution from industrial emitters. In Denmark, approximately 800 enterprises and 1,200 animal husbandries are governed by the IED. The IED also allows the authorities to impose a requirement for the enterprises and animal husbandries to use the best available techniques, which called BAT. So in addition, the IED can impose certain requirements and supervision by the authorities of the following: combustion plants and investigations of soil and groundwater pollution.
So the second one is that they have adopted the European Union Climate and Energy Package, agreeing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 20% this year compared to their previous year's emission, which again goes back to their goal to be fossil fuel free in the next year. So the European Union has therefore laid out its path for the period after 2012 when the Kyoto Protocol expires. As a result of this burden sharing agreement between the EU member states, Denmark must reduce emissions from non-emissions trading scheme sectors by 20% this year compared to their levels in 2005. So now we may proceed to tell our comments.
Yeah, as I think that the economic impact that Denmark is taking in consideration in their policies are very well placed, and so that their policies do not interfere with the economic um, apparatus that performs in Denmark. So I think that their policies are not as far that they are being intrusive.
Yeah. What about
Um,
you, Nancy?
I think that it's important to recognize that in Denmark, they managed to mix economic interest with concern for the environment and create a new green project. And I think that other countries in the world, it's important to make these green projects for the environment.
What about you, Thea?
So for me, I like that they try to recycle more and incinerate less, since incinerating might involve hazardous smoke that might damage the atmosphere, the ozone layer. I also like the organic farming concerning the animals, and I appreciate that they have a very firm goal about being independent from fossil fuels. So I hope that they continue to achieve that goal.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, all of your comments. And for me also, since based on the research, Denmark is one of the top 10 countries as a good environmental performance country in OECD. So they already implemented the Industrial Emissions Directive, IED, what I mentioned a while ago, and then ETS for tracking emissions trading scam. And they also further steps will need to be taken to achieve the stated goal of a climate neutral economy by 2050. So it means the Denmark government also think not only their environment but also the economy. So it evaluates progress towards sustainable development and green growth with special features on waste, materials management, and the circular economy and chemicals management. So I think I hope, yeah, I hope most countries should follow the policies what Denmark implemented in order to protect our environment and our earth. Yes.
Yes, I also agree with you. I think that Denmark has one of the most progressive environmental related policies, and that many countries in the world should aspire to be like them.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all. So thank you for thank you for your thoughts and discussion. So that is our discussion for today. And yeah, thank you again, guys. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you
Thank you.
for the patience and everything. Well, uh,
Let's go Denmark.
let's go Denmark. Yeah.